Hi everyone, it's Paul at the Garland County Library, and today's program is on making movies, and it features, actually we're going to show a pre-recorded video by three people that are very involved in the filmmaking industry. We have Tom Capps, who's a director, editor, and writer, Janelle Tedesco, who's an actress and writer, and Phil Russell, who's a cinematographer, editor, and writer. So I'm going to share this video that they've recorded, and there's my cat in the background, and we actually we'll have at least one of those three, Tom, on standby to respond to any questions and comments you may have during the video, and he'll address those afterwards. So feel free to leave those in the comment section. And for now, I'm going to share the video with you and tune back in after it's over. It's about an hour-long video.
Hey, hi guys.
Hi, how's it going?
Hey, what's up? How you been?
Great, we're all here. Welcome to Making Movies, the craft, the secrets, the fun. I'm Janelle Tedesco, and I'm a professional actress. I actually began in musical theater. I have a Bachelor of Fine Arts from Boston Conservatory in musical theater, and I've performed on stages all across the United States and Europe, most notably on a national tour starring Ann-Margret. I am the newest member of the filmmaking team. I started making movies, writing, and producing in my 40s after I had children, and I love it.
And I'm Tom Capps. I'm a director, producer, writer, editor, gaffer, cook, animal wrangler, occasional art director, basketball referee, was a barista that one time, worked at a golf, too many things, just too many things. But I'm also one of the co-founders of Thursday Shoots, and we've made content for Funny or Die, truTV, College Humor, UCB Comedy, the California Science Center, and a bunch of other places that exist mostly on the internet.
And I'm Phil Russell. I used to be a film professor at Five Towns College, but now I work freelance as a DP and editor. I'm also the post-production coordinator on truTV's Impractical Jokers Inside Jokes and HGTV's 100-Day Dream Home. And our team, Thursday Shoots, is responsible for some award-winning short films, and we produce content for television, some museums, and a bunch of other stuff too. And you are here because you love movies and want to learn more about how they're made.
I mean, not necessarily. They could be here because they want to make a movie of their own and don't know where to start.
Or maybe they just want to hear some really cool behind-the-scenes stories or watch some awesome movie-making magic tricks.
Yeah, well, regardless of what you want to learn, we've got you covered.
Yep, we're going to cover all of those things.
Whether you're considering making a film of your own or you're just curious, we have coverage of all of that.
Coverage. That's a film term.
I think they get it, that they're covered. We covered that.
Well, I'm covering up this pasta because I want to eat it later.
Okay. Why don't we just get started? Take it away, Tom.
Today we're going to be showing you what went into the making of some of your favorite films and give you the tips and tricks you need to make a movie of your very own. Now, with any project, there are three main phases: pre-production, production, and post-production. We'll be discussing the other two a little bit later, but right now I'm going to give you the basics of what is arguably the most important phase, pre-production. So what is pre-production? Well, it's pretty much exactly what it sounds like. It's everything you're going to do before you start shooting your movie. This is where you figure out your budget, hire your cast, hire your crew, locations, hair, makeup, props, wardrobe, catering, animals maybe. It's mostly spreadsheets. It's like a lot of spreadsheets. But before you can even start making those spreadsheets, you need what is without a doubt the most important piece of the puzzle, the script. Like production, there are three main phases to any story: the beginning, the middle, and the end. That may seem obvious, but you'd be surprised at just how many major motion pictures forget that. In addition to that, there are five major elements that every story needs: characters, a setting, a plot, some kind of conflict, and some kind of resolution. A common story structure that you might already be familiar with is the hero's journey. You've seen countless examples of this. Star Wars, The Avengers, Indiana Jones, Moana, The Lion King, really anything Disney's ever produced. So all of the things. Before you start writing your script, you're going to want to create some kind of an outline, breaking down those 5 elements I had mentioned before. Now, there's no right order to do that in, but personally, I like to start with the characters. When coming up with characters, start with a protagonist. Someone or something we're going to root for the duration of our story, our hero. And you need an antagonist, someone or something to get in the hero's way, someone to root against. In Star Wars, Luke Skywalker would be your protagonist and Darth Vader would be your antagonist. Or in 127 Hours, James Franco would be our protagonist and the boulder crushing his arm would be the antagonist. That line might get a little blurred depending on the story, but for our purposes, let's just keep it simple. So our main character, or protagonist, is Tom Capps. Younger than he looks, but older than he'd like to be. And our antagonist is easily distracted and overly caffeinated. Okay. Now we need a setting for Tom's story to unfold. This can be anywhere. The environment itself can even be your antagonist. So we're in my office. Interior, Tom's office. It's evening, a little cluttered, but cozy. He lives in an old pre-war building in New York, so the temperature is horribly inconsistent. That brings me to plot and conflict. Now, your plot is usually driven by your conflict, or the thing your main character is trying to overcome in order to achieve their goal. And there are 4 kinds of conflict: person versus person, person versus self, person versus society, and person versus nature. Depending on your story, your main character could encounter all 4 of these conflicts before reaching any kind of resolution. In this case, we have 3. Person versus person. Tom has to come up with this presentation while fighting the urge to both procrastinate and pee. We have person versus society. Tom's trying to show the audience the basics of storytelling and pre-production while also trying to keep their attention. And 3, person versus nature. I really cannot stress how inconsistent the temperature in this room is. Now, every story needs an end, a resolution to the hero's journey. Luke Skywalker blows up the Death Star. Simba reclaims Pride Rock. James Franco cuts his arm off. They're not all pretty. Now, some movies leave the ending up to the audience's interpretation, like Inception. One way or another, the movie does have to end. After thwarting his own procrastination demon and successfully instilling the basics of story structure onto his audience, Tom opened a window, letting the cold air in, and finally being able to rest. So now that you have your outline, you're going to want to turn it into an actual script. Now, if you've ever seen a film script, you've probably noticed that it looks a little bit different than other written texts. While writing a script, it's crucial to get the formatting correct. You can try to do this on your own in whatever word processor you prefer. However, there is tons of software out there that will help you to format your script properly. I like to use Final Draft. However, Celtics is a free program that's easy to use. Now, keep in mind, you don't need to be the person that writes the script. Plenty of directors and producers don't. But whether you're the writer or not, one thing is for sure, you cannot get started without one. Now that you have your script, it's time to tackle the rest of pre-production. And a big part of that is figuring out your budget. And while we're not all working with Disney money, plenty of amazing films have been made on very small budgets. Movies like Clerks, The Blair Witch Project, Dallas Buyers Club, Moonlight. Napoleon Dynamite cost $400,000 to make and went on to make $46.1 million worldwide. While the physical cost was pretty high, Morgan Spurlock made Super Size Me for only $65,000 and went on to make $20.6 million worldwide. And Rocky's budget was only $1 million and raked in $117.2 million worldwide, sparking one of the most iconic franchises of all time. And on an even smaller scale, our movies. We made our film I'm Not Lost with less than $400. It might seem weird to use the phrase low when referring to $1 million, but considering what went into making these movies and what they went on to do, those numbers are pretty impressive. An important thing to remember is to work within your limitations and utilize the things you already have. For Clerks, Kevin Smith shot at the convenience store he was working at after it had closed. For Halloween, the iconic Michael Myers mask was actually just a $2 Captain Kirk mask that they spray painted white. And the quote-unquote fog used in the Terminator was actually just insecticide that was being sprayed all over LA. That method I don't advise. And for our film, I'm Not Lost, we just took to the streets of New York and borrowed our locations. Maybe your friend owns a camera. Maybe your grandma has a really cool house. Maybe your partner is an amazing cook. Maybe you have a cool looking dog. Before you go spending a bunch of money, think about the things already at your disposal. That being said, know your budget before you start shooting and figure out what you're going to spend that money on while you're in production. So let's go ahead and break down that little script from before. This will help determine your budget and how long you can make it last. Now, usually when you would do a breakdown, each item would have its own separate spreadsheet. Like I said before, a lot of spreadsheets. But for simplicity's sake, I've gone ahead and just put everything on one page so we can see it at the same time. So when breaking down a script, you want to go through line by line and assign a specific color to each type of item. On our script, I did this already for the sake of time. I made locations blue, characters orange, props green, wardrobe red, and makeup purple. Now, most of these items could probably be sourced. I mean, I think I have almost everything in this. We have access to nothing and come up with a budget estimate based off that. Let's say the office will rent it to us for $1,000. We're going to get, let's say, Brad Pitt to play Tom. Stop laughing. Brad's going to do it for $500. One day shoot, cool dude. Props in total are going to cost about $150, and wardrobe probably costs us about $75. Makeup, I think we're only going to need $50 maybe for that beard. And sweat, just use water. Another thing you're going to want to factor in is how much you have to pay your crew. There are multiple different positions, which Phil's going to go into in a little bit, and each of those positions has its own specific rate. Now, again, a lot of indie filmmaking is based off asking for favors, including people donating their time and labor. But for right now, let's just assume we have to pay everybody. To pay everyone a pretty standard day rate, a 15-person crew would run you about $4,150. Another really important thing you need to factor in is food. For 16 people at about $10 a meal, you're looking at $210 per meal. And maybe spend about $100 on craft services. So you're at $520 just for food for one day. Again, maybe you have friends that own gear, but let's pretend you don't. Your gear rental on this, let's say, would cost about $1,200 for a camera, sound, basic grip gear, and lights. And of course, there's production insurance, which will run you about $500. Things come up that cost money that maybe you didn't plan for. So you're going to want to set aside some miscellaneous money just in case. So let's say that's about $200. So without utilizing any of our own things or calling in any favors, this little one-page movie could wind up costing us about $8,325. So the next time you watch something, hear what its budget is and think, how did that cost that much money? Remember, this one-page, one location, one actor movie that we would be able to shoot in one day cost us almost $9,000. It adds up quick. Now, the person handling most of these breakdowns would be a producer. I'll go into what a producer exactly does a little bit later, but finding a good producer is invaluable and a person that you should absolutely seek out. Pre-production might not be the most exciting part of making a movie, but it is the most important. Having a plan ensures that everyone stays safe, you don't spend all your money, and that your end product is as good as it can be. So you have your script, you've broken it down, and you've figured out your budget. Now it's time to put together your crew and cast your film.
Okay, so you have your script, you have your producer, you've started pre-production. Now it's time to get a cast. It's actually kind of incredible how much of the process happens before you even have actors in your film. But how does that work? How does the casting process work? Well, even though there is kind of a straight line set up, it doesn't always work that way, of course. It can definitely vary quite a bit from film to film. But the most standard way is once a film is written and has a producer and a director, they hire what's called a casting agency, the head of that being the casting director. The production company actually sends over to the casting agency a breakdown or a description of what each character entails. And the casting director sends those breakdowns out to agents or the talent agents that represent the actors. The agents submit their clients that they feel fits the descriptions. And it's up to the casting director to decide who even gets an audition. I always find that really interesting. But of the actors that audition, the director will usually be the one that chooses who gets the role. But it usually does have to get approved by the producer as well. This is the way that the system is set up, but of course it doesn't always work that way. I think especially in independent film, oftentimes, like in the early stages of independent filmmaking, you'll find writers producing and casting their own films, right? So they're not using any casting directors or casting agencies or anything like that. Sometimes you'll even see actors writing and producing films for themselves to star in. That's something that I actually did. And being on the other side of everything, seeing how production worked, seeing how casting worked, actually helped me tremendously as an actor. And right now, there's really a huge push for actors to be proactive in this business. So they really want, people that are casting films really want actors to write their own films, create their own opportunities. So that is also something really cool. There's a lot of actors that are writing short films for themselves or even feature-length films for themselves. So, but it's not a new concept, writing a script for yourself to star in. In 1975, Sylvester Stallone was a broke and often out of work actor. And that was when he wrote Rocky. Now, amazingly, he got a really great production company that was interested in producing Rocky, but they told him only if they could use an already famous actor to sell the film. They actually offered him $300,000 for the rights to Rocky as long as he didn't star in it. And he said no. I mean, he was totally broke. I think that is so cool. So he held out, he fought, and eventually they did decide to produce it. And you know the story from there. I mean, Sylvester Stallone has made hundreds of movies, writing, acting, directing, producing. So he is a pioneer. Back to casting. So on the smallest levels of independent film, you'll often see filmmakers just using their friends, casting their friends in the films. But once the scripts start to become a little more complicated and they have to go beyond their pool of talented friends, but they don't have the budget to hire a casting agency, they can use those casting sites themselves. They can put their project up on various casting sites. Interesting tidbit here. It doesn't cost anything for the filmmakers to put their project up on these casting sites, but it costs the actor to submit to the film. I've always thought that was interesting, but it's all a price of doing business. So they list the character breakdowns, and sometimes there's something very general, Ted, lead, open ethnicity, male, cheery, non-threatening, blah, blah, blah. Sometimes you need something that is very, very specific, and that will be listed in the casting breakdown. The actors would submit themselves, and then the filmmaker doing the work of a casting director chooses who gets the audition, and then, of course, it goes from there. But let's get to some of the juicy stuff. What we in the business call name talent and what you call celebrities. Interesting thing is it's kind of the same. It's kind of set up the same for both independent film and your big budget movies, because everybody wants a recognizable name and face to help sell their film. But in the independent world, all right, so say you have a script that you just know is really phenomenal and you really want, you really believe that it can go somewhere. So if you get a producer that really believes in your script, it's going to be their job to get your script into the hands of those name actors, those famous actors that, are interested in independent film, that fit the project, fit the character. And they can't move forward though until they get a name. With an independent project, you don't know for sure if you're going to get one. So everything goes into a holding pattern until you can get that name. But if you do, once you've secured that name, you've attached it to your film, that literally will set the parameters for how you'll be able to produce the film. So the budget and planning will continue once you get to that point. Now, tons of famous actors actually got their start in independent film, maybe even most of them. But there are a lot of actors that even after they become famous, still do and love doing independent film. Meg Ryan, Eric Roberts, Ellen Page, Bryan Cranston have all gone back and done independent film even after they became famous. These films aren't created to have commercial success, so the actors are getting an opportunity to play roles that they wouldn't usually be considered for, and that can be a lot of fun. You know, they won't get paid as much, they won't have all the bells and whistles that they're used to, but that's when you realize that they're really just doing it because they love acting. So that is really awesome. But, you know, even with a big studio film, like really big budget stuff, with literally every resource available, finding the right actor for a role is not always easy, and it doesn't always go smoothly. Sometimes the director and the producer want a different actor. Sometimes the director and producer just have a completely different idea of how that role should be cast in the first place. Sometimes an actor will turn down a film for various reasons. But sometimes even after an actor is cast, they just don't quite fit the role. Eric Stoltz was 5 weeks future before they recast it with Michael J. Fox. Even fame doesn't necessarily make it easier to get those really awesome roles. You'll always be fighting in this industry. In the 1993 movie, The Piano, the director wanted a tall actress to play the leading role of Ada. She actually wanted Sigourney Weaver. But the script made it into the hands of Holly Hunter. And in addition to being an excellent piano player, she just fell in love with the character, and she just felt like she alone could embody that character. But she couldn't even get an audition. The director was just like, oh, she's too short, she's totally not right. Holly Hunter had to fight just to get an audition. She got the audition, she got the role, and she ended up winning the Academy Award for Best Actress. So that was worth the fight. So what about you? Have you ever wanted to act? You can't answer me now, can you? But I just want you to know that it's never too late, like literally never too late. You can take lessons at any age. There's even online classes now, and there are roles in theater, in TV, in commercials, and film for literally all ages. I'm sure you've probably heard some stories of actors that didn't really become famous or have like that big breakout role until later in life. Harrison Ford was 35 when he got Star Wars. Kathy Bates was 42 when she got Misery. Oh, Morgan Freeman was 52 when he got Driving Miss Daisy. But they all had some training and some experience. But there are also well-known working actors that never even considered becoming actors until later in life. And my favorite example of this is Katherine Joosten. Now, you might not know her name, but you will definitely know her face. She had an entirely different career. She was a psychiatric nurse. She was in her 40s when she decided to do some community theater, and she just loved it. So she decided to move to Hollywood when she was 56 years old. Now she's going to auditions and she's competing against actresses who have been doing this their entire life, that had credits and who knows, lots of credits. But she did it. She made it happen. She landed roles in ER, Roseanne, Murphy Brown, Seinfeld, Frasier, Just Shoot Me, The Nanny, Providence, West Wing, Spin City, Scrubs, Will and Grace, and so many more. And then she got a recurring role on Desperate Housewives and won 2 Emmys. So there you have it. It is never too late. But even if you just want to dabble, oftentimes movies need a lot of local extras. So if you're interested, but you're not on any of the casting sites, you can usually find that kind of stuff in a local paper or even on Craigslist. When a movie is coming to town and they need background actors or extras, they sometimes post it on Craigslist. So you could just take a look there because that is a lot of fun as well. Okay, on to production. Take it away, Phil.
Production refers to the process of actually filming the stuff that you see in a movie or a television show. Once you're done planning, your first day on set is the start of production. A lot more goes into the filmmaking process than just a camera and the cast. The credits lists at the end of Hollywood movies are long, right? Really long. Crazy long. There's a lot of different positions, some that you might not even know about. On film sets, all the different jobs belong to different departments. And all of the jobs can be categorized into a basic structure containing above-the-line positions and below-the-line positions. All the positions above the line generally refer to people that actually have creative control over the movie. Those below the line work to help bring the vision of the film to life. Let's go over a few positions that are on almost every film set, both large and small. At the top, we have directors and producers. Tom will go over those positions in detail soon, but for now, you just need to know that generally speaking, the director holds creative control over the project, and the producers are in charge of the overall coordination and budgeting that allows the project to happen. Next, we have the director of photography, also sometimes known as the cinematographer. They're in charge of how the film looks, and they work with the director to decide on the camera angles and lighting. Also above the line, we have the art director, who is in charge of how things look on a film set. The props, wallpaper, room layout, set design, photos, and more are all handled by them and their team. Wardrobe, hair, and makeup are important too. On smaller productions, these jobs are sometimes handled by just one person, but on larger productions, each category will have their own department head and a support team. Think of period piece movies or fantasy pictures like all need to look like they fit in with that world. You'll need a huge team of people to pull off those looks before the cameras are ready to roll. Now moving below the line, at the top we have the assistant director. Contrary to popular belief, the assistant director doesn't actually help the director with creative decisions. Instead, it's their job to run the set. They keep things moving, keep people working, help decide and keep track on the filming order, make sure lunch breaks happen on time, and more. Bigger films have additional assistant directors, like the second assistant director, who would be in charge of coordinating background extras and other moving pieces. There's also production assistants, generally considered to be at the very bottom of the hierarchy, but they are still a very important part of larger productions. They're in charge of locking up the set, which means that when the cameras are rolling, they'll make sure no one makes any noise or accidentally enters the scene and ruin the shot. They'll also run errands and take care of any small needs that production has. Then we have the camera department. Of course, there's the camera operator who works the camera. Sometimes to save time, more than one camera is used to film the same scene. Also part of the camera department, there's the first assistant camera operator. They support the camera operator to make sure the camera is functioning properly. This is a big job on large film sets because professional grade cameras are very intricate, large, heavy, and have lots of different attachments to plug in and menus to navigate. They're also in charge of making sure the camera stays in focus, which can be tricky on shots that have lots of movement. It might just be the most technically demanding job on a film set. Then there's also the second assistant camera operator. They support the camera team in additional ways, such as helping the first AC build the camera at the start of the day, keep notes about all the camera settings used on each shot, and they operate the slate. The slate is that clapper thing you sometimes see in behind-the-scenes videos getting smacked before a shot begins. This tool is used because audio and video are often recorded separately, so the camera will see this part close down, the audio will hear it, and then you put the two together in editing to make it all synced up, like this. If you didn't use this tool, something like this might happen.
And tell our enemies that they may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom!
That would not be good. There's also the electric department. They're in charge of lighting, and the grip department, who are in charge of much of the heavier equipment used on film sets. That includes stands that the lights are mounted on, sandbags that are used to stop those stands from falling over, and scissor lifts that bring heavy lights or the camera way up high. They also are in charge of pushing the dolly, which is basically a mini car used to roll the camera around. And that's just a small handful of all the different crew positions that can make up a production team. On larger Hollywood films, there's a lot more people, and big movies create a lot of jobs. There's also a ton of different filmmaking equipment to learn about. There's cameras, lenses, C-stands, dollies, cranes, jibs, steadicams, gimbals, tripods, HMIs, LEDs, molds, kinos, spring clamps, maver clamps, singles, bulbs, memory cards, smoke machines, doling spray, boom poles, lavaliers, and way more. But I'm here to tell you that all you need to make a movie is one of these.
That's right, a smartphone. Most people have one of these, or at least know someone who does, and you can make a movie on it. There's even some feature films that were shot entirely on iPhones that went on to win big awards and helped launch the careers of those who made them. The film Tangerine is likely the most successful example. Its debut at Sundance Film Festival was a smashing success and became a huge inspiration for independent filmmakers who didn't have access to professional grade equipment, so they started creating using their phones. I filmed this shot using a professional camera, but I filmed this one using my phone. Still looks pretty good, right? Let's go over some of the different camera angles that are used when making movies and some other tips and tricks. Maybe the most famous of all shots, this is the close-up. It's pretty self-explanatory. It's a close, intimate shot of the subject that feels personal and can really showcase the emotional depth on an actor's face for important moments in films. Here we have a medium shot. This is wider than a close-up, a bit less intimate and useful for when an actor is moving around a lot. It's commonly used in comedies where a close-up might feel too intense. This is called a full shot. It shows the full body of the actor. And this is a wide shot. It shows a large area, which is great for showing the distance between things in a scene. It's also commonly used as an establishing shot at the beginning of a scene to let the audience know where the scene is taking place. Establishing shots don't have to be wide shots though. As long as they reveal where a scene is, they work. For example, this close-up of a sign is also an establishing shot. An audience will expect to see what's happening inside this place in the very next shot. Moving camera angles have names too. When a camera is on a tripod or handheld, sometimes it gets tilted in different directions. Moving it up and down is called tilting, and moving it left and right is called panning. When a camera is physically moving forwards, that's called dollying in, or sometimes just a push in. The opposite is called dollying out or pulling out. Now that's a little different from zooming in and out, a term you're probably familiar with. That's when the camera stays in one place, but the image still changes from a wide shot to a close. Is a change in focal length. Lenses look a little different when they are zoomed in and out. When zoomed in, it looks like things are compressed together. When zoomed out, things look like they're further apart. Check out these two shots of me side by side. On the left, the camera is farther away, but zoomed in. And on the right, it's closer, but zoomed out. You can see a big difference, right? It doesn't look like I'm moving as far on the left as I do on the right. More zoomed in shots, ones that are shot on telephoto lenses, are generally preferred for close-ups. Since wide-angle lenses spread things apart, they can make people's facial features look a little off. Zoomed-in shots look a lot more elegant. There's so many different camera techniques that it's literally impossible for me to go over all of them. But there is one trick that's used in pretty much every scene of every movie that I want to go over with you, called the 180-degree rule, or sometimes just the line. Imagine a scene taking place between two people, and we're looking at it from above. Filmmakers will draw a theoretical line between the two actors. Then, they will always put the camera on one side of that line and never cross over it. They'll do this for all the different camera angles that they shoot in the scene. Let's film a scene now to use as an example of this. Caitlin and I will be the actors, and we're going to draw a line between the two of us. When we're facing each other, we're always going to keep the camera on this side of that line. Whenever the camera is pointed at me, when I'm looking at Caitlin in the scene, I will always be facing to the right. When the camera is pointing at Caitlin, she will always be facing to the left, like this. It always looks like she and I are facing each other, so the audience will never get confused during the scene. If we were to put the camera on that side of the line and then use some of those shots in the scene, sometimes it would look like we were facing the wrong direction, and it could get a little bit confusing. Kind of like this. Oh, Caitlin, fancy meeting you here.
Hey, Phil. What's so fancy about it?
Nothing, it's just an expression.
Well, yeah, it's surprising, but there's nothing fancy about it.
No, you don't understand. It just means I wasn't expecting to see you.
Oh, well, why didn't you just say that?
Huh. Why didn't I just say that?
Well, gotcha. Catch you on the flip side.
Who's flipping a jet? Almost every scene in every film will follow this rule without exception. That way the audience will never get confused about where the actors stand. Now, with these simple tricks, you could plan out some shots and film a scene using whatever means you have at your disposal, even if it's just your phone. Now, if you are using a phone to film a scene or just a simple camera, then I would recommend doing it in a brightly lit room or outside in the shade. I recommend this because the lighting in overcast weather or in the shade is a lot softer. It's not direct sunlight hitting people's faces. Soft lighting generally makes people look prettier for close-ups. Here is a close-up of me under direct, hard lighting. It really shows off my imperfections. But here's the exact same shot, but in softer lighting. I kept the camera settings exactly the same, so you can see the difference on my face. The brightest light in a scene is called the key light. It's usually a soft source to keep people looking pretty. Something called diffusion can be used to help make a hard light softer by spreading it out so it's less direct. I hope that these production tips and tricks have given you a little bit of insight to what filmmakers are thinking about when they make movies, or maybe even inspire you to try making your own. It really is a lot of fun.
If you've ever watched the Oscars, heard them call Best Picture, and thought, who are those people accepting the award? Those are the producers. And like I said before, a great producer is an invaluable asset to any project. So what does a producer do?
The producers who guide the process from the first glimmer of an idea to the final fade out.
Thanks, Gad. Producers involved in pretty much every stage of production, from pre to post. Producer will seek out a script or an idea that can be developed into a script, and then go out and look for financing to turn that idea into a movie. Remember all the spreadsheets from before? That's what a producer is going to do in pre-production. Break everything down, including your budget. A producer is also responsible for hiring the director and all the other key positions. If you've ever watched a film's credits, you've probably noticed that there are multiple types of producers. A producer, by definition, is a person that initiates, coordinates, supervises, and manages the creation and production of a movie. There's the executive producer. This is usually a person who puts up the money for the film, and there can be multiple executive producers. There's a line producer. They're usually responsible for every below-the-line member, meaning not the producers, directors, or writers. They can hire crew, oversee budgets, and more. And on super small productions, that's just the producer's job. There are associate producers, and this is probably the most vague of the producer titles. They're given to people who are important to the production, but not necessarily hands-on. Then there are co-producers, who are people who work alongside the producer. Co-producers are usually much more hands-on during pre-production, helping the producer get together all those spreadsheets I keep talking about. But as independent film producers, the producer is really focusing on all the logistical elements so that the director can focus on the creative. So what exactly does a director do? A lot. Most people want to be the director, but not everyone really gets just how daunting of a task that job can really be. You are the captain of that ship. The second you walk on set, it's your show. While there are multiple department heads that will handle their own departments, all of them are going to you to make the final decision on these things. Everything from wardrobe to makeup to locations, what an actor needs to do, the type of shot you're going for, down to what earrings someone might be wearing. You're the captain. And that is a huge responsibility. The director also works with the cinematographer to come up with the shot list and figure out the visual style of the movie. And a lot of directors and cinematographers will work with each other over and over again, like Quentin Tarantino and Robert Richardson, the Coen brothers and Roger Deakins, Steven Spielberg and Janusz Kaminski, and Tom Capps and Phil Russell. And of course, there's directing actors. So what are some tips for directing actors? Well, it's important to remember that actors are people first. And like people, every actor is a little different. Certain actors like Marlon Brando, Robert De Niro, Charlize Theron, most famously Daniel Day-Lewis, are known as method actors, meaning that even when the camera's not rolling, they're going to stay in character. So now as the director, you need to figure out not necessarily the needs of Daniel Day-Lewis, but the needs of Abraham Lincoln. Jim Carrey stayed in character during Man on the Moon as either Andy Kaufman or Tony Clifton, which actually created a lot of problems on the set because you never knew which one you were going to get. And then there are actors like Bryan Cranston who on action will jump into character, and then on cut will go back to having just a casual conversation. And then there's actors like Janelle Tedesco and Shannon Moore, who you just call action and crushes it on take one, and then, we just hang out and have a good time. It really comes down to who the person is and what they need to do their job well. There are three things you want to make sure that the actor knows: who they are, who they're speaking with, and what their objective is. A lot of that would be figured out through rehearsal and the actor's own work. As a director, you want to create a positive environment, not just for your cast, but also for your crew. The tone of the set really shows up in the end product. If everyone's miserable, you're going to have a miserable film. But if everyone's having fun and is happy to be there, you're going to have a better movie. Don't give line readings. Don't tell your actor how to deliver their dialogue. Some people don't mind that, but a lot do. Know what you want and be clear and concise when delivering it. Your confidence it inspires the confidence of everyone else, including the actors. If you kind of are fumbly and don't know what you're doing, everyone else is going to feel awkward and like they don't know what they're doing. My number one tip for directing actors is to treat them with respect. Work with them to come up with a vision that you both can be proud of. I also think every director should try acting once, whether you take a class or get in front of a camera yourself, to really understand what it means to be an actor. You might not be good at it, but you should know the work that goes into it. At the beginning of this presentation, I rattled off a laundry list of things I've done. And while some people might think that's spreading myself too thin, I think it's made me a better director because now I know exactly what goes into the different things that I ask people to do. Now, different directors have different styles. There's a lot of differences between a Quentin Tarantino movie and a Wes Anderson movie, or a Michael Bay movie and a Sofia Coppola movie. Some like to improvise and treat the script like a jumping off point. Others prefer to have everything worked out to a T, using the script as law. Judd Apatow, for instance, likes to be a little loose, usually standing behind the camera, feeding actors lines that he comes up with in the moment. Directors like Clint Eastwood like to do 1 or 2 takes and give very little direction to actors. Some directors, like David Fincher, are so meticulous with the project that they'll sometimes do 100 takes to get something right, which was the case in the opening scene of The Social Network. Stanley Kubrick also used to do a lot of takes and actually set the world record on The Shining at 127. Finding your own style might take a little bit, but the best thing to do is to just watch stuff and incorporate the things you like into your own work. So why are films shot out of order? Well, it's impossible to shoot a feature film in one day. So for scheduling reasons, you bulk certain scenes together. For instance, if you have a night scene in the beginning of your script and again at the end, you'd probably try and shoot those in the same day so you aren't doing 2 different overnights. If you have a character that appears at 2 different points in the movie, you probably want to schedule those scenes on the same day as well, so you only have to bring in the actor once. Let's say you're scheduled to shoot outside on a specific day, but that day it turns out to be torrentially downpouring and the scene doesn't call for rain. You need to be able to move that and replace it with something else so that you can stay on schedule. If you're a first-time director, my number one bit is great, because you're not. You could be, but this is your first time. If you let your ego get in the way, no one's going to want to work with you again. Filmmaking is a collaborative process, and while yes, as the director, you're the captain, and sometimes that involves making tough calls and laying down the law, you need to be open to other people's input, people who have been around longer, people who have more experience. If this is your first time directing, find a producer who's made other things. Find a cinematographer who's shot other movies. And keep your ego in check. One tip, not just for filmmaking, but for life, is to screw up. You have to. Fail a bunch, and then learn from it. Swallow your pride, bury your ego, and grow. You only get better at stuff by doing it over and over again. And this might sound like the exact opposite of that advice, but also fight for what you believe in. If there's a shot or a line or something that you really feel strongly about, get it if you have the time. Now, things do go wrong on set, and this is why pre-production is so important and why having a plan is crucial to keeping everyone safe. As a producer or a director, that is your number one job. As a producer, you're responsible for what goes on set. You're responsible for making sure all the permits are in place, that all the locations are secure, and that everyone can work safely. And as a director, you should not be putting anyone in harm's way for the sake of your vision. When producers and directors fail at this, that's when tragedy can happen. During the production of the film Midnight Rider, producers failed to secure the train track location that they were filming on. Not only were they not authorized to shoot the scene on the tracks, but they failed to tell their cast or crew this information, resulting in the tragic death of camera assistant Sarah Jones. Deadpool 2, a Marvel movie with a huge budget. Stuntwoman Joy Harris was killed after losing control of her motorcycle because production failed to implement proper safety precautions and didn't even have her wear a helmet. These are just 2 examples of what happens when producers don't plan accordingly or cut corners and fail their cast and crew. There is not one shot, stunt, or idea that is worth more than the lives of your cast and crew. So how do I pivot off that very lighthearted note? When it comes to the editing process, a director is usually very involved. How involved really comes down to the director, but most directors are there from the start to the finish, and some directors, like Kevin Smith, even edit their own work. Personally, I like to let the editor have one pass before I get involved, but other directors like to be in the room from the second the first frame is cut. Depending on the project, the director might not actually have final cut of the film, especially on bigger budget studio films like The Avengers or Justice League. The studio will have final say over the product that they're going to put out. That's also why you usually see a lot of director's cuts coming out after the fact. A common phrase you might hear on set is, "We'll fix it in post." And while ideally you'd get everything done while you're on set, sometimes that's just not possible, or things happen that are outside of your control. So now it's up to the editor to bring everything together in phase 3, post-production.
Post-production is the part of the process where all of the editing takes place. All the footage that was shot during production is taken and spliced together into one cohesive story. Sometimes this process is started while a movie is still being filmed to save time. They'll take all the footage that has been done thus far and begin editing it even while more footage is still coming in. Pretty much all television shows are made this way. Editing is incredibly powerful. There's so much that you can do with it. For an example of this, you should check out this one video on YouTube called The Shining as a Romantic Comedy. The funny video edits moments from the famous horror movie together in a way that makes it seem a lot more pleasant than it actually is. Just like in production, on larger projects, there are whole teams of people that work together to edit a movie. There are supervising post-producers and regular post-producers who oversee the process and guide the editors in terms of story and general direction. There's also the editors themselves who do most of the work putting the scenes together and fine-tuning them to be just right. Also, there's assistant editors, who are usually the first ones working on the project. They organize and prepare all the footage and get it ready for the editing process. With so much footage to sift through on larger projects, they are 100% necessary for editing to run smoothly. They are also in charge of syncing the video to the audio, if it was recorded separately. Then there's what I do as a post coordinator. I basically help with the communication process between all those other positions and help keep things running smoothly. Of course, smaller productions don't need all of those positions. In fact, sometimes a single editor will do all of the work, or a director or another production crew member will also be the editor themselves. Again, I'm here to tell you that all you really need to edit a film of your own is one of these, a smartphone, or any computer or laptop will do. There's even some free editing software that you can use when you're first starting out. I personally most popular choice among independent filmmakers. Some larger productions use it as well. But Adobe also offers a free program called Adobe Premiere Rush, which is a simpler editor, available on either your phone or your computer for free. It's a great tool to learn on. Most television is edited in Avid Media Composer. Avid offers a free version of this software as well, called Media Composer First. This software is a little bit more complicated, but if you're serious about learning and you know that you want to get into television editing specifically, I definitely recommend you try it out. Another option is DaVinci Resolve. It's primarily color correction software, which refers to the process of making films look even better in post, but it also has a great editor in it as well, and there's a free version. Now, there are tons of different editing software to choose from, but you can really use anything that you like. Once you've learned how to cut a scene together, the art itself is universal. It's just a matter of learning the intricacies of each software. Even if you switch, you'll still have the knowledge of how to cut a scene. Nowadays, virtually all editing is done on the computer, but back when movies could only be made using actual film and not digital cameras, the editing process was a lot more physical. It wasn't done on a computer at all, but editors actually cut film strips and then put them back together in a different order. The concept when editing in a computer is the same, but instead of using a pair of scissors, you can cut with a single click. Pacing is important to keep in mind when you're editing, or how a scene kind of flows together. Musicians commonly make good editors because the process has a rhythmic quality to it. If you cut between a ton of different shots really quickly, it adds to the intensity and chaoticness of the moment, and can keep people on the edge of their seat. If you hold on shots for a longer time before cutting, it slows down the pace, which can add emotional drama and force the audience to really pay attention to critical acting moments. Choosing when to finally show that close-up after only using medium shots in a scene can subconsciously tell the audience, this moment right here, this is important. There's quite literally an infinite number of ways that you can edit any scene, even with the most basic editing knowledge. Editors hold a ton of creative power over the film, but above all, it's usually the goal of the editor to be completely invisible. You don't want the audience to pay attention to the editing. You just want them to be in the moment of the movie. The highest compliment an editor can receive is often no compliment at all. Assurance of a job well done. Here's one editing trick that's used in pretty much every movie and television show ever. Let's take a look at that scene we shot earlier, but we're not going to use the editing trick. Oh, Caitlin, hey, fancy meeting you here.
Hey, Phil. What's so fancy about it?
Nothing. It's just the expression.
No, it's surprising, but it's not fancy.
No, you don't understand. It just means I wasn't expecting to see you.
Okay, then why didn't you say that?
You know what? You're right. That's way easier. Now I feel silly.
Well, catch you on the flip side. I'm a jet out.
What? Something felt a little off about that scene, right? Everything felt stiff. Let's watch it again, but this time I'll use the trick when I edit it. Oh, Caitlin, hey, fancy meeting you here.
Hey, Phil. What's so fancy about it?
Nothing. It's just the expression.
No, it's surprising, but it's not fancy.
No, you don't understand. It just means I wasn't expecting to see you.
Okay, then why didn't you say that?
You know what? You're right. That's way easier. Now I feel silly.
Well, catch you on the flip side. I'm a jet out.
What? The second one felt a lot more natural, right? I used an editing technique called L cutting and J cutting here. Basically, in some shots of Phil, I stay on him for a little while even after he finishes speaking so that you can hear the beginning of Caitlin's next line. No, you don't understand. It just means I wasn't expecting to see you.
Okay,
Then I cut to Caitlin.
why didn't you say that?
Since we already heard her speak, seeing her feels very natural. The first version of the scene where we ended each shot immediately after each character finishes speaking just feels stiff and unnatural. No, you don't understand. It just means I wasn't expecting to see you.
Okay, then why didn't you say that?
You know what? You're right. You become aware of the editing. The scene just doesn't flow. They're called L cuts and J cuts because of the way they look on the timeline. The video footage is always on top and the audio is on the bottom. See this? Kind of looks like a J here because the audio comes in before the video does.
Fancy.
No, you don't understand. And this one looks like an L because the video shot ends, but the audio continues into the next shot. That's way easier. Now I feel silly.
Well,
Of course, there are a lot of advanced editing techniques and special effects that can be done, like green screen. Green screens can make it look like scenes are happening anywhere, even when shot in studio. The computer detects everything that's not green and removes it, so that visual effects artists can add in whatever they like. If you wore a green shirt to a green screen shoot, it can mess things up. Oops. Yeah, just like this. That's better. Now, before I end this section, let me give you a little insider tip. Who provided funding for the project but aren't directly involved creatively. They still get a say in the creative process, though, and will sometimes ask for changes in the edit. Now, it's their jobs to do this, and occasionally they'll ask for changes just because they don't want to look like they're not doing their jobs, even if the editors already think that it's good the way it is. That's when we'll employ something that we like to call shiny objects. Shiny objects are basically imperfections that we leave in the edit, knowing that our higher-ups will ask for them to be changed. That way, they'll ask to change that, potentially instead of something that we already really like the way that it is. Now, not every network is like this, and usually you'll work with great people who collaborate and help make the project the best it can be. But sometimes, to make that happen, you gotta be a little bit sneaky. I hope I was able to teach you some fun new things about the editing process. A lot of work goes into movies and television shows, even after the actual filming is done.
And there you have it, a finished product. Congratulations, you've made a movie. Okay, so what happens next? Well, unless your film was produced by one of the top production companies like Columbia Pictures, Warner Brothers, or Paramount, it won't be playing in movie theaters across America. Those movies usually have what's called distribution before they even start filming, because those really big companies, production companies, have a distribution company right within them. But there is a process for how you get your film into theaters. But unlike the casting process, there is never a straight line, and there's actually too many possibilities to go through in just a few minutes. So I'm going to focus on one, and that is film festivals. Now, what the heck are film festivals anyway? Well, I will tell you that they really do come in all shapes and sizes. But here's how it works. So a festival will have a venue or maybe several venues, and they'll have a specific amount of times and days that they want to screen films. Sometimes they're themed, meaning they only accept documentaries or horror or comedy. Some of them are actually location specific. Some of them will only screen feature films. or short films that can be anywhere from 5 minutes to, I don't know, it's like say 40 minutes or so. But there are actually thousands of festivals. And a lot of them are actually international, which means they accept submissions from films that were made all over the world. Some of them have cash prizes, and some of them are considered Academy Award qualifying festivals. And then there is the Big Five. So the most well-known of those are Cannes Film Festival in France and Sundance Film Festival here in the United States. But honestly, most festivals don't have the ability to lead to nationwide distribution, but they are still a huge and important part of the process for filmmakers. I mean, first of all, there's really just the submission and acceptance part of the process. Oh, and just to be clear, you have to pay to submit to each individual festival. So the process is costly, and you want to be choosy about where you decide to submit your film to. Really make sure to read those requirements on what it is that they're looking for. And also look up the festival to see what kind of films they tend to screen. If they tend to screen films that have controversial issues and you have a lighthearted comedy, you might want to move on to the next one. And if it's a very big festival, consider if you think your film is ready to compete with a festival of that caliber. Because there are anywhere from 5 times to 100 times maybe as many submissions as there are spots available to screen. So you will not get accepted to everything. But that is a very important part of the process, seeing how your film stacks up against others. Then there's just seeing it up on the screen. Now, it's amazing when it's a big movie screen, but some smaller festivals have smaller spaces. And sometimes those intimate spaces work great because they're better for crowd reaction and mingling afterwards. But seeing your film up on a screen and watching it along with people that you don't know you, is a great indication of how it will play for an audience, and how creative choices you made are landing with people. Are you even getting your point across? And then there are the awards. Now, you made it into the festival, but now how does your film compare with some of the best ones out there? You know, it's kind of important for your resume as a filmmaker to show that you can make something that can win awards, even if you probably haven't heard of most of these awards. Our award-winning filmmakers. And then there is probably the most important part, networking. Oh, I used to think that networking was a dirty word. Like, oh, you mean I have to go to these events and like try to seek out really important people and become friends with them so that I can further my career? No, absolutely not. You can't do that because you will never make friends that way. But here's what you can do. You can go to the event, talk to people like people. And if you see a film that moves you and you get the opportunity to meet someone who worked on that film and then you tell them that, well, that is a great jumping off point for a very real conversation that could lead to a very real connection. And all connections have value, but they don't all look the same. I have actually gotten paying jobs from people who I've just casually met at festivals. Now, have you wondered yet how Phil, Tom, and I have become partners? Well, they had made dozens of films together since college, but on my first film, they both screened at the same festival. We met there. I saw their film. I loved it. We really enjoyed each other's company. We just liked each other. So we decided that we wanted to work together. And we made a film called I'm Not Lost that's currently screening in festivals. Most of them are virtual right now, of course. But then we enjoyed working together so much that we made another film, and that film is in post-production. But now we are friends, we are partners, and we push each other to be better because we have different perspectives and different backgrounds. And so for me, each film that I've made has been a little bigger and a little better than the last one. But we are just at the beginning of our stories as filmmakers. Now let's talk about some huge success stories, because you know I love those. You've probably heard the name Quentin Tarantino. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Kill Bill, Jackie Brown, Pulp Fiction, and dozens more. He had made 2 films, wrote, produced, and directed before he made Reservoir Dogs, a film that screened at Sundance in 1992. It didn't win any awards, but it was so different that everybody was talking about it. And so that got so much publicity that it did eventually lead to worldwide distribution and to relationships that basically turned him into an absolute force in this industry. Okay, here is a great one, a little bit more obscure. Ben Zeitlin was a young independent filmmaker when he made a short called Glory at Sea. That film won an award at a festival called South by Southwest that allowed him to fund a feature film called Beasts of the Southern Wild.
My name is Ben Zeitlin, and I'm here with Beasts of the Southern Wild. I mean, we finished the film 2 days before Sundance. I was still waking up from, the 3.5 years of work as things started happening. So there was no moment of sort of considering, are people going to like it? Are people not going to like it? I think we expected to be showing it in community centers, basically, at this point. And just to have it kind of play across the world is such a great privilege.
A few screens at some community centers? That film swept across the world, played at Sundance, at Cannes, winning awards in both, and eventually was nominated for 4 Academy Awards. It's insane. So if you are here with us today, you like movies and you're interested in how they're made. So you should go to some film festivals, when they're in person again. Like I mentioned, there are festivals everywhere, not just in big cities. But if for some reason those really big festivals are still a little bit too intimidating, check out some of the smaller ones. Oftentimes, a bar or a pub will host a small festival or screening series in their gathering room in the back, which is a great place to see short films and then talk afterwards with the filmmakers. Maybe even offer your help on their next film. Being on set is absolutely the best way to learn. But even if you just enjoy watching films, remember that a bigger budget doesn't necessarily mean a better movie. So make sure to check out some independent films as well.
So what'd you think? We know that was a lot of information, but a lot goes into filmmaking.
Oh, we probably each could have filled an entire hour with every individual section. There's just a lot to learn.
Well, we hope that you had a great time and learned something new. Who knows? Maybe some of your own.
I mean, that would be rad. We had a lot of fun putting this presentation together and hope you enjoyed it.
And if you want to see more from us, you can check out Thursday Shoots online. We're on all the social medias, and we have a website, www.thursdayshoots.com.
Thank you for watching Making Movies, the craft, the secrets, the fun. Bye. Catch you on the flip side.
Flip what?
All right, thank you everyone for watching, and we have Tom and Janelle here who were in the video, and I see we had some viewers, but everyone was shy, so we didn't have any live questions or comments. But if you guys have any remarks you would like to make, I'll give you that opportunity.
Well, first I want to say thank you everybody so much for can you guys hear me? Can you
Yes.
hear me okay? All right. Thank you so much for, showing the program, and I'm glad that people watched it, and I hope you enjoyed it. I'm currently on a set right now, and I might get pulled away very quickly. So I just tried to sneak away here for a moment, but I thought that was very fitting that here we are talking about how magical it is to be on a set, and I've magically been here for a very long day, so it's wonderful. But Tom, is there anything that you want to say, or is there any questions that we think people usually have? What questions do people usually ask?
I don't know. I mean, we cover a lot, and
I know.
We usually get why we decided to do this with our lives. That comes up frequently. You know, it's just a thing I wasn't too terrible at. I like doing. I'm incredibly jealous of Janelle being on set while I'm still in my county office. But yeah, I don't know. Thank you all for watching. Thanks for having us. And yeah, I got nothing to add. Check out Thursday shoots.
Yeah.
You know, and yeah.
And if anyone does have any questions watching this recording, where can they contact you?
You can check out any of the social medias if you want to just go to Thursday Shoots. I know you said this is up on your Facebook, so you know, Thursday Shoots on Facebook. You can shoot us a message there. I think our website is set up to do that. That's the Phil question. He's not here, so. But yeah, ThursdayShoots.com's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all the social medias. Feel free.
And any acting related questions, if you wanted to reach out to me, you can find all my information on my website. So it's just JanelleTedesco.com. So tell you all the fun stuff about going from being an actor to being a filmmaker.
Alrighty.
All right. Well, thank you guys for your time and the good video, and talk to you later. Take care.
Thank you, Paul.
All right.
Bye-bye.